vague title for action. So I would like to start by asking Senator Russell to clarify and to explain what action the board would be expected to take pursuant to this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Bori, and welcome to everybody. I noticed that we have 23 persons participating. That's good. And this special session was called after we had a policy meeting to discuss the several ways that the Board of Trustees can address the solvency of the GRS. The first item on the agenda deals with a pension obligation ban. A little history should be provided here. I was actually in the legislature when the legislation to revise the GRS system was promoted primarily by Senator Berry at the time. She was the president and I was the vice president, and we we decided that we would support the GRS's proposal to get a pension obligation ban, a ban dedicated to saving the pension system. At that time, the GRS was not facing the dire straits that it's facing now. And the pension obligation ban at that time was 600 million, which would be a bond dedicated to the solvency of the GRS, particularly shoring up the investments at that time that we knew that the GRS had invested. They had a lot more investments than now because we have liquidated stuff, but it was meant to shore up the system, and it's a bond dedicated for pension systems. So we believe that in our discussions that the GRS system needs an infusion, a large infusion of cash, particularly to shore up its investments, stop the liquidation of stocks and any other assets, and most importantly, to look to the future with investments that would be lucrative for the GRS system. The bond capacity of the government is restricted by the Revised Organic Act. And those of us who have been in government long enough know that the government has used up a lot of its bond capacity. And whether or not the bond capacity at this time can support a bond of the nature needed to secure the solvency as the GRS is a major concern. Let me get into what we thought. We thought in the policy committee that they may need several vehicles, and one of the vehicles for the GRS to reach some kind of solvency would be doing the bond. We know that the bond that was authorized by the legislature for 600 million may not be enough. And so we discussed figures in the policy committee meeting, and then we asked Mr. Nibs, and I think it was Mr. Williams. Is there somebody who doesn't have their?
Somebody to open mic.
Yes.
And you need to put it on me.
Please, yeah. So we really needed some expert support to find out what would be a reasonable figure to ask the legislature to float a bond to shore up the GRS system. I had suggested 900 million simply because of the passage of time and some degree of inflation, but that figure wasn't based on our actuaries pointing out what type of bond, pension bond we would need. So I think we asked Mr. Nibs and our experts to come up with a figure that they believe would satisfy the GRS system in moving forward, okay? So the pension obligation bond is not a new concept for the GRS system. The GRS system proposed it to Senator Berry when we were doing the, let's call it the revitalization of the system. And it was never accessed by the executive branch. The only thing that we could have done in the legislature is pass legislation giving the authority for the executive branch, probably through the PFA, to float the bond. I think we're at that point now, and we discussed it extensively in our meeting, that we need to ask the legislature, sort of demand it, really, tell you the truth, that they need to float a pension obligation bond with whatever capacity our government has based on the revised Organic Act, and to make it as large as necessary, as large as provided in the information that we would give them that we need. So that's the gist of the discussion, Mr. Chair and members and whoever listening. So Mr. Nibs, I'm going to ask you if that research is that information and research was done to what would be a reasonable request to the legislature for pension obligation bond. We asked.
Could I intervene a minute there? I'm trying to understand what is it you're going to be requiring the board to do?
To vote and adopt an approach to the legislature to float a pension obligation bond. And as our policy going forward in terms of how we want to approach solvency, to sort of, with the support of our members and government employees, to say that this is a necessary expenditure for the government to keep the GRS solvent.
Okay.
So I want to adopt a measure saying that this is how we need to move forward, and this is the recommendation of the system to the legislature and the governor, that we float a pension obligation bond for a specific amount.
Okay, so you are aware that the governor has, and the legislature is currently considering a proposal to fund the GRS system.
I am aware of that.
And which does not include, it includes a bond, but not a pension obligation bond.
I'm aware of that too.
So you're saying that the GRS should pass a resolution suggesting, asking, and your term demanding that the government float a pension obligation bond, notwithstanding the fact that the government's advisors have advised them that the pension obligation bond is not the preferred approach, and that the government has a plan that will sustainably finance GRS system for the foreseeable future. I think it doesn't involve a bond, but not a pension obligation bond.
Well,
The financial analysis that been submitted to the governors suggested that that approach is a preferable approach to pension obligation bond. So, and then the other issue, the other question I have is that, I mean, how is it our mandate as a GRS to demand to the government how to fund the system? The system is the government's plan. Government is a plan sponsor. It's a government plan. The government defines the benefit, and the government determines how to fund the benefit. Our mandate is to administer the plan that the government design and define. So how is the board in a position to demand, to use your word, to the government how to fund the system? Not sure I understand that part.
okay. We could change the word from strong request from demand, because demand might be a little bit, well, I would say a little bit strong, but in any event, we don't pass legislation. So we know we can't really demand anything unless we get the population that vote for senators and governors behind of us. We get them, the dynamic of what we do can be changed from a request to a demand simply if we get voters behind of us. And the system has 16,000 voters paying into it, 8,000 receiving an annuity, and another 8 or something thousand that work for the government. When you have that amount of voting power, you can make strong requests and also maybe also a demand. And my view is that my view is simply that we need to utilize all of our resources to get the legislature and the governor on board.
Okay. All right. I guess I'll listen. My take on this is that I think that the government's proposal as it is right now is a better option than the pension obligation bond. It accomplishes the same thing for much less money. I would say I'm not sure. The pension, the government has had the option on the books for a while, as you say, to issue a pension obligation bond. But the government has not chosen to exercise that. It chose to take a different path, which the advisors are told it is a preferred option. And from my view, from a GRS perspective, as long as the system is being sustainably funded, I'm not sure why we think we need to tell the government how to fund it. Besides, my personal view, by the way, is that the government's proposal is a preferred option. There's a bond proposal in the proposal, which accomplishes what a pension obligation would accomplish for much less cost.
Okay,
It funds the system some $4 billion over 30 years, which as our actuaries has advised us that that funding, that stream of funding will keep the system solvent for the foreseeable future. In fact, it would take insolvency off the table. We don't have the credit rating for a pension obligation bond. It's going to be more expensive because interest on a pension obligation bond is taxable, as opposed to our regular bonds, which are tax exempt. So the interest rate is higher. The interest rate to pay is higher. So as far as we're concerned, as I'm concerned, the proposal that's on the book that's being considered funds the system sustainably. It takes, which is our interest and our concern, that the system be funded sustainably. Which is what the pension obligation bond would, I assume, would be intended to do. For the stream for the stream of contributions that is expected to come from the proposal, you'll be looking like a $2 billion pension obligation bond to get a similar value of money. So, and as you say, you haven't tested to see whether the government has the bonding capacity for $2 billion. And keep in mind that there are two kinds of bonding capacity. There's a legal capacity, which is the one you referred to, and there's a financial capacity, which is the ability to pay capacity. If you can't pay, even if you have legal capacity to issue bonds, if you don't have the capacity to pay them off, you still can't issue them. So every financial advisor who know about these things have indicated to the government that pension obligation bond at this point in time is not the route to go. So my take on it is that from a GRS perspective, our concern is that the system is sustainably funded. And the proposal that the government is considering, which is developed a joint proposal between the governor and the legislature so far, sustainably funds the system. That's what we want. And they have been advised against going by the financial advisors against going the pension obligation route at this time. So I don't agree that GRS should take a position to try to demand, to suggest, to indicate to the government that the pension obligation bond route is the route to go. Our analysis and our actuaries and even the task forces have already told us that two ways to fund the insolvency or the unfunded liability. Either significant additional annual contributions or significant one-time cash injection or infusion. The government is developing an approach that will guarantee significant additional annual contributions, totaling up to $4 billion in over about 30 years. That funds the system sustainably for 25, 30 years. Takes insolvency off the table. So that's my take on it. I do not agree that the GRS should be, trustees should be trying to strong arm the governor into going to pension obligation bond when all the financial advisors tell them that's not the route to go.
Well, I beg to differ because the GRS system, from my understanding, is the system that promoted the pension obligation bond when the system was being revised. And why I said that is because I have not heard any expert make the comparison that you're saying. Maybe the governor team and the legislature heard it, but as board of trustees, we have not been privy to any information that would dispel the pension obligation bond financially or legally. And unless I, as a board of trustee, hear a rational explanation as to why an infusion of cash from a pension obligation ban would be unwise and why it wouldn't benefit the territory. I haven't heard that yet. I haven't seen an analysis that convinces me that a pension obligation ban would be unwise. And I think we as Board of Trustees need to be privy to this information. If we're not going to go with a pension obligation ban, tell us why not, and explain it in detail with the financial analysis and explaining to the Board of Trustees why we can't get an infusion of cash from a ban issuance that would give us the infusion of cash to get past the insolvency. So I have not heard that.
Okay.
And I beg to differ because
You're differing with,
with the fact that the government's proposal is better. That's what, not with you, because you know, as Board of Trustees, we got to separate ourselves from the executive branch and the legislature and look out for the system, because, you know, years have passed where the executive branch has really failed to address the GRS insolvency. And now that election year coming up, all of a sudden, to me, it has a solution? No, I'm not sure that I'm convinced that that solution is the best solution on the table. So I beg to differ with that. I know you support it, and the next issue that that's being thrown around, it's interesting that when Gruff supported and had a petition saying just dedicate the rum cover over, it wasn't even considered, but now it seemed to be considered. So I have my concerns about the governance plan, and unless I could have the experts explain to me why at this time, with the interest rates, with the government, US government providing excess cash in various, you know, avenues for what COVID and everything, why it would be bad and why it is unwise for a pension obligation ban. So we have a difference of opinion, and I haven't heard an explanation that could convince me that it would be unwise for the territory to float a pension obligation ban to give the infusion of cash that this system needs to survive. Okay, so I'm open to hear if anybody who participated in these discussions are saying a pension obligation ban can be done or why the ban capacity, I'd like to hear that, because I have not been convinced. I'm hearing a lot of things that don't have substantial financial and legal backing yet. Okay, Mr. Bory?
I take it you haven't read the proposal, the government's proposal.
Yeah, I read it. The thing about it is you have to be I have to be very careful, because you know, I have seen proposals that come from the executive branch and proposals that, you know, to me, the first time a special vehicle purpose came up, I mean, these things have happened. It's not, it ain't come in a vacuum. Things have happened before. And we are aware of things that happened before. So I'll leave it there.
Okay. Any other? So just to be clear, you are expecting the board to vote on a resolution? What action?
A resolution requesting that the legislature consider a pension obligation ban when they're passing legislation. Yes.
Any other any other comment? Any other board members?
Yes, morning, Chair. This is Trustee Dorsey. I don't remember us having the discussion about the governor's proposal. I'm not sure if that was supposed to have been part of those last couple of meetings that we had to end abruptly because we lost a quorum. So maybe someone can bring me up on speed on that particular proposal, because I just don't remember us having that discussion on the governor's proposal or any other proposals. But I know in the policy meeting, we asked Mr. Nibbs to come up with a number. So at least we'd have something to talk about today. Mr. Nibbs, were you able to, through our, I guess, our consultants, come up with a number that the policy meeting members requested?
I thought I sent the board a copy of a presentation that was made after I contacted Al Winfrias, who is the actuary. He had done something for another presentation, and it shows different scenarios of amounts that would be needed, up to $2 billion in a pension obligation bond to satisfy what the SPV is trying to do.
Okay, that's fine. So it's about $2 billion. Okay, so we have a number.
We have 4 scenarios. I'm just up to $2 billion, including 600, gradually increasing. I can put it on the screen if you want me to.
If you can.
Please put it on the screen. And may I, Mr. Chair, we never discussed the governor's plan.
Yeah. Because we spend a lot of time doing other things. Let's let the chair of the committee got the solvency, what's it called, the GRS solvency committee that's marking up the governor's plan, has indicated that he is willing to make a presentation to the entire board and to explain.
Yeah.
So that is in the works.
Okay.
So we'll get a full explanation if you wish. Whether you wish or not, you'll get a full explanation, you get to ask all your questions, and you get to pose your questions directly to him, whether and why you think the pension obligation bond, and he'll get to respond to you. I'm assuming he'll have his financial folks there. So, and I think I told you that, and when I had a discussion with you, I suggested to you that would have been a better approach than trying to get the board to sign on to this resolution. Well, so all the questions you get to ask, you get to ask them directly before the committee, and they'll have the advisors there.
Okay, but we never discussed the governor's plan, which are creating a sort of special vehicle again to pay the bond debt that they lien. So maybe can we have an explanation of that to the board members? Because you and I discussed it, but they need an explanation too.
I'm not sure. You want to explain the special?
The governor's proposal without the markup. In other words, I'm sure that the Senate will mark up the governor's.
Basically, from a financial point of view, I mean,
yes.
If you strip out all the legalese, it basically is going to set up a plan where there is going to be a mechanism for channeling matching fund revenues to a GRS fund, GRS trustee fund, and it lists it's going to be substantial annual contributions. It's over the 30 years. The amount of annual contribution range from $80-something million to $157 million per year. Grand total, $4 billion over about 30 years. And the actuarial analysis I think you're aware of the fact that our actuaries were providing technical support to the team, governors and legislatures team, in terms of running the numbers. And they have indicated that that income stream will pretty much take insolvency off the table, keep the system is solvent for at least 30 years, by which time the tier 2 employees will be retirees. And according to the actuarial analysis, the tier 2 employees, their contribution will be actuarially self-sufficient. So for all practical purposes, that stream of funding over that period of time, coming directly, almost directly from the matching funds, will sustainably fund the system for, as I said, for the foreseeable future. That's the gist of the program.
Yeah.
It includes a bond. It's not a public. It's not a pension obligation bond, and it obviously includes a special purpose vehicle.
And that's a problem, which is
Well, it's a problem if you want to do a pension obligation bond also, because
No.
you cannot get to the market without a special, in this year, in this time, the government of the Virgin Islands cannot access the bond market on its own credit. Neither the general government nor the PFA, which, by the way, is a special purpose vehicle. The PFA is a special purpose vehicle.
and
And
we,
the PFA, all the analysis has shown, and we have proof that in 2016, as you know, the government attempted to access the bond market and couldn't do it because its bond rating is so poor that it can't feasibly and economically do it. The same thing is happening here. The government cannot feasibly, efficiently access the bond market on its own credit, neither the general government credit nor the PFA credit. That is the reason. So if you're going to do a public pension obligation bond, they'll still have to do a special purpose vehicle.
well, we could discuss it at length, but the full faith and credit of the territory, whether they create a special purpose vehicle or not, it still remains the same.
No, it's
So
not. It's not.
Because and get into the legalese, but let me say this.
It's not a legal thing. Financially, it's not. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, guys, that makes sense.
The full faith and credit of the government can't issue any bonds. That's why we can't go to market.
Right, but still the ROM cover over is the vehicle which guarantees and
that's the source of funding that the government is using.
Right.
Yeah, guys, I'm informed. You got one out new street.
why not do it more directly? Why not?
You can't get more direct than that.
Okay, let's if you want to explain the governor's proposal, my question is going to be a very serious of how they fund the GRS without expending extra money, creating a special purpose vehicle, and getting legislation, just simply dedicating the ROM cover over 100% to the GRS.
You can't do that. You can't do that because the ROM cover over money is already pledged to existing bonds.
Yeah, well, the whole issue of that pledge, let's not get into it, because I am going to question fundamental things that this government has done, and whether or not people like it, I disagree fundamentally with how this government is managing money and how they are allowing the GRS insolvency to loom over retirees and government workers. But I will leave it to the proper forum where we talking to legislators who could make changes and leaders. We just discussing now.
Okay, so I think that's much better.
So we answering the question that Mr. Nibs, you can put it on the screen for Mr. Dorsey.
This information was given to the board.
What's the question? Just tell him the number.
Huh? No, I'm saying the presentation that was done before, it gives 4 scenarios up to $2 billion. That's what he had asked me to check with.
Okay, so give him the number. This meeting is about pension obligation bond. That's the item on the agenda.
Well, that's what it is, pension obligation bond.
So give him the number.
I said up to $2 billion.
Okay, so,
What are the
Chair, let me just say this too. As trustees, at least where I sit, we're at a little disadvantage. I understand you saying the governor has a plan, and then the Senate Chair Committee, or that committee has a plan for the GERS as well. But we're at a disadvantage. I guess you were a part of those communications, but we're at a disadvantage. I think the fair thing to do for our trustees is to allow us to have that dialogue directly with the governor and directly with the chair of that particular committee in the Senate. And I think at that point, prior to having those meetings, we will get the documents so that we can review them. So when we have the meeting, we can then have the questions that we would like to bring forward.
I told Senator Russell that the chair of the subcommittee has committed to me that he would make an opportunity for the entire board to appear for it.
No, I understand what you said in reference to the chair. That's coming like right now. I've been asking for this meeting forever. I'm asking also in reference to the governor. You said the governor has a proposal. We need to hear from the governor directly himself so we can ask him directly. It's not fair for you to speak, to say what you believe it to be. Let's hear from the source who put it together, and then we will have our comments directly to the governor. And I hope it's on a public forum like this as well.
Right, well, you could do that. I mean, the governor's proposal is out there. I'm not sure if you haven't seen it.
Have not had any discussions. We've had no discussions. We've had no discussions as a board
I'm asking
in
you.
any detail about that. As I said earlier, it might have been on the last 2 agendas where we had to adjourn the meetings early for lack of a quorum. So I hope if when we have our next general meeting, that would be the first item on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Nibs, could I get the various 4?
Okay,
Started with, you ended with 2 billion, but you didn't, it doesn't start at 2 billion. Could you mention it to the people that are participating and all the trustees, please?
Okay. Back in October 2021, the actuary did a report, which I circulated to the board on January 1st in response to the questions that were asked by the policy committee. He started with 255 million, 600 million, 1 billion, and 2 billion. Those were the 4 scenarios that he did.
Right, and Mr. Bowery, the issue as to whether a pension obligation bond could be floated for some one of those figures, we would need a lot more details from the governor's proposal to dispel why not. Because as I see it, the RUM cover over is a quick fix. It gives us enough to pay the annuities and to have a little small amount of money for investment. What we need is to shore up our portfolio of investments. So we need 1 billion, if we need 900 million, and we need that so that our portfolio goes back to how it was, where it would provide income beside paying the annuity. So,
Mr. Trustee Wasson, all the reports that we've had prepared, including the task force reports, have always said that there are two ways to fund the unfunded liability, two basic ways. One, either substantial additional annual increases in contributions or substantial one-time cash infusion. Pension obligation bond would be a one-time cash infusion.
right.
Governor's proposal, the government's proposal, what's being discussed, take the other option, substantial additional annual contribution. And the actuaries have indicated that that is sufficient to take to fund unfunded liability over time. Funded liability, substantial annual increase, which is, as I said, based on the analysis, amounts to about $4 billion over 30 years. And that will be in addition to the normal payroll-based contribution that we get every 2 weeks.
And I understand that.
So the numbers work out. Whether you do it as substantial increase of annual contribution or you do it as a one-time thing, you fund the system. So I'm not, I mean, and I said, if the amount of if you take the present value of the income stream that they're projecting, it comes to, you'll need about a $2 billion pension fund POB to get the same value, and then you'll have to pay interest on that.
Well, you know, let me say this to you.
I think I'm going to lose quorum. I'm going to lose quorum in a while, Mr.
No, we could continue to another time.
We need to get to what is it you want the board to decide today, because I'm going to lose quorum.
Well, it's simple. A resolution to the legislature requesting consideration of a pension obligation ban, along with the other legislation dedicating the ROM cover over to the system. A simple resolution saying that this is what we would like the legislature to consider is appropriate for this board to put to the legislature and the governor. I am not sure that we should jump on board with what's being offered simply because it may not be enough to set the system up like how it should be set up for the future. You and I differ whether it would set it up like that. I don't agree, because I believe that our investment portfolio needs an infusion of cash. And if we want to go back to lending as a lending institution, as we providing resources for finances for the territory, we could become a very, very important financial engine for this territory. And we need to be funded so that we could explore those options. So I move that the board adopts a resolution suggesting to the legislature or requesting that they consider a pension obligation ban and dedicating the entire cover over, rum cover over to the GRS system. I so move.
Second,
Trustee Colwood,
No.
trustee Dorsey,
yes.
trustee Liger, absent, trustee McDonald, absent, trustee Russell,
Yes.
trustee Smith, trustee Smith. She's trustee Smith, Chairman Barry,
No,
trustee Smith is on the call. I'm not sure if she's hearing me. I would have to mark her absent. Trustee
Mr. Nibbs, Mr. Nibbs, I'm here.
Trustee Smith, do you hear the motion?
No, could you say it again, please?
Motion to adopt a resolution to the legislature to consider a PAB in conjunction with the SPV legislation.
No,
2 yes, 3 no, and 2 absent.
okay, so the motion fails. So that is the extent of the agenda for today's meeting.
Well, I think we should consider the rum cover over issue. The bond pension obligation bond failed, but the rum cover over is not a new issue to this territory, and I need to.
What is it you're asking the board to approve on the rum cover over?
To legislature to simply dedicate the rum cover over to the GRS system, the entire rum cover over.
Point of information, Chair.
Point of information,
Yes, that rum dedication, trustee Russell, is that excluding what's already obligated? When you say the entire amount, that's the entire amount less what's been obligated?
Yes. Okay, let me just say this here. The rum cover over is 2 pieces of legislation, you know. It's a 1050 permanent allocation and then a 275 congressional allocation each year. What we might want to do and what we have to do is find out whether or not the entire rum cover over is dedicated and is subject to a lien. If it's subject to a lien, then the legislature should float a ban to pay off the lien to free up the rum cover over without any legislation tied to that that would dedicate the rum cover over to another entity. And that would free up the rum cover over, not having a lien, and then the entire rum cover over should be dedicated to the GRS system. And we could discuss that, how the legislation is drafted currently and how the senators might figure out they want to, you know, float a bond or anything to cover the lien. Might be complicated because the legislature could dedicate the entire rum cover to solve the issue for the GRS. It's just
what's
what-
your answer to Mr. Dorsey's question?
the
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
is
Yeah, point of
that
information.
I don't have the information as to the extent of the lien that the legislature put on the rum cover over. I thought it was the entire round cover over. And that's where I need some additional information as to the entire lien that the legislature created for the round cover.
So what I suggest, honestly, I mean, if for that position, there's no reason why that can be, that has to be done in a special session, right? I mean, if you don't have the information, so you're asking us to vote on a position, to take a position on a procedure that you admit you don't have the information to do. I mean,
You don't have to have the information, Mr. Bori.
you want to have,
The position, you could, listen, the legislature is responsible to us. If we adopt a position that they find untenable, that's fine. But let's adopt a position with all the information we have now. And the lien is a problem of the legislature because they created it. The round cover over is a dedicated fund that we could get dedicated to the GRS. Let's vote on it.
I don't know what you're asking us to vote on.
Well,
I could just ask a question again. What I was trying to request was with your motion, Trustee Russell, it would be the difference of what's left over being dedicated to the system. Because there are existing obligations, then those obligations obviously would have to be paid. But whatever is left over, if that's the motion, then I'm all for that. Until we can get to a point to figure out what the difference is, because whatever the governor and the Senate chair is proposing, it's somewhere in the same line of refinancing to create a vehicle that would free up some cash to put forward, right? But I'm just saying, I'm not one to take out any loans. I haven't seen these documents that we've been talking about. The chair's been talking about the governor's document. We haven't had that type of discussion about it as trustees. So, like I've said, I think whoever the source is, they should come directly to us as trustees. But since we don't have that opportunity today, I think you have a good proposal. I just think it just should be clear to say that whatever is left over as of today, that money come to the system. I don't see that as an issue.
No,
Whether we have the figure or we don't have it.
I'll amend my request because it's more reasonable what you're suggesting, because it would protect the territory's obligations.
So what is it you want to vote on?
Yeah, well, let's amend my motion to incorporate what Mr. Dorsey said, that we don't affect the obligations, current obligations. We just want any balance that's left over from the cover over after obligations are paid, dedicated to the GRS. Yeah, I so move. Yeah.
Second.
So the motion is that the Board of Trustees indicate to the governor or the legislature that what?
That any difference, which is what Member Dorsey, after obligations are paid from the wrong over, that difference is dedicated to the GRS.
Which means, nothing else get funded from
Funded, only the GRS. After the wrong over is, its obligations are paid from the bonds to the bonds, the balance goes to the GRS. Nothing else get funded, okay?
Point of information, Chair. When you say nothing else gets funded, what exactly are you referring to?
to me.
Yeah, the chair, you just mentioned nothing else gets funded. So I was asking a question. When you say nothing else gets funded, what exactly are you referring to outside of the bonding that needs to be paid back? And whatever those fees are to service those bonds?
Any other thing that the government funds from the matching fund?
Okay, that's
Matching-
fine.
Matching fund monies are appropriated every year for specific, including in some years, contributions to the general fund.
That is correct, Chair. But in this case, Chair, I'm in agreement with you that there's monies going to other places.
Yeah.
But I'm also saying that there'll have to be cutbacks in those other places because we're all supposed to be in this together. So those are obligations that could be cut back.
That's legislative prerogative. But anyway, so.
No, I'm in agreement with you, Chair. We're not saying anything different.
Okay, so let's get to the vote. So the vote is that the GRS indicate to the legislature that all monies for the matching fund, other than what's obligated, should go to GRS. That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, and let me, you
Okay,
want to,
I'm a loser core, Mr.
yeah, Mr. Dorsey, and anybody who's, you at some point as board of trustees, you have to understand that the executive branch has a different agenda than the board of trustees. And
We have a motion. We have a motion on the floor. Could we get to the motion, please?
a little discussion because I want to clarify with Mr. Dorsey. And so, Mr. Dorsey, if any things are being funded from the run cover over, the executive branch should be, they will make the adjustments accordingly. And they're entrusted to making the adjustments with the legislature. What we should get a dedicated fund, the run cover over, to this system, which is without any concessions for any other measures to be paid out of it until we are solvent, okay? That's it. And that discussion is for anybody who trying to operate with some kind of a misunderstanding as to what some of the previous measures by Gruff and everybody was trying to do.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, you could-
Okay. So you want to call, everybody understand the motion? You want to, Mr. Secretary, you want to read back the motion for
I mean, I've heard so much interpretations. It's a motion to advise the legislature that any proceeds from the rum cover over after payment of the debt service and other fees should be channeled to the GRS.
so debt service and other fees, I said, other obligations. What was
Other
the-
obligations, any leftover after payment of the debt service, other obligations should be provided to the GRS.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? I get a roll call.
Trustee Colwood?
Who second the motion?
Dorsey,
Did.
Seconded, Trustee Dorsey.
Trustee Colwood?
No.
Trustee Dorsey?
Yes.
Trustee Liger, absent. Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Russell?
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
No.
trustee Barry,
No.
2 yes, 3 no, 2 absent.
Okay.
Point of information, trustee, Chairman Bory. We had on the agenda today 2 proposals from the policy committee.
No, we don't have that on the agenda today.
We had on the agenda today 2
No, we don't.
proposals through
No,
the
we don't.
chair.
No, we don't.
Let me finish my thought. We had on the agenda 2 items that came from the policy committee, which trustee Russell explained today. He got his motions and he got his seconds that were voted down. Chairman Bory, do you have any other suggestions that we can discuss today in meeting these obligations of the system?
Now,
And I'm not talking about anything from the governor or anything from the Senate. Do you have anything as the chair that you'd like to discuss with us as trustees today?
I'm nothing to discuss further. This meeting was called for for specific purpose. We have concluded that business. It's time to, it's time for adjournment of the meeting.
I move that we adjourn the special meeting of the Board of Trustees. I so move.
Second.
Trustee Calwood,
Yes.
trustee Dorsey,
Yes.
trustee Liger, absent. Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Russell,
Yeah.
trustee Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Barry,
Yes.
5 yes, 2 absent.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Meeting is adjourned. When is the regularly scheduled meeting, Mr. Nibbs?
Next, the board meeting is on January 27th.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody.